What is up, Generals? This is Fiasco. We're back with Ultimate General Civil War, and this is the J&P Rebalance mod, Confederate playthrough. We're playing the skirmish at Manassas Junction, or Manassas Depot, and we're jumping right in because I've sort of taken the habit of playing these battles at least once. Trying to at least kind of get familiar with them before I go into a recording session. And I guess I just decided, like, I've played these enough where I'm kind of thinking I would have preferred to keep the first recording or the first attempt where it was close enough or more interesting or more dynamic that I figured, why don't I record it? And then if I don't like it, that's, I suppose, fine. Play these no more than once or twice. But your first attempt, you go into these things blind. There's a really good chance you walk into something that is a really obvious blunder, and it costs you the whole campaign. I suppose that's more of an issue at Legendary than it is at MG, but it's certainly a thing to be aware of. So Manassas Depot is the Confederate version. Well, it's the same battle. It's just the Confederate side of it from the Union Mission Distress Call. Now, it's quite a bit later in the war, and ostensibly speaking, everyone should have markedly better equipment. So in that regard, it's quite a bit different. But as far as I know, the relative numbers of forces involved are more or less the same. And this is an interesting thing as well about this battle is it's, as far as I can tell anyway, organized at the regimental level. So I'm fighting here with 2 divisions rather than 2 corps. And that's cool. I think that's really cool. We get a handful of lucky splits. We get double skirmishers, double cav, and one of their brigades splits in 2, which is nice. I'm trying to think. I don't think we get any lucky splits as far as the artillery is concerned, but that's fine. This ends up being an infantry fight regardless. And so I wasn't planning on recording before I jumped into the battle, so I didn't do my usual preamble or camp screen. Fortunately, one of the reasons I decided to keep this recording is that the camp screen doesn't really matter as far as this particular battle or skirmish is concerned, insofar as 100% of the troops that you command are Allied auxiliaries. Trimble's division, and then later on we get another division from the left of the screen. So I had played this battle back in the day for my original vanilla, 1.24 MG playthrough, and I think that there was the perception that this battle was hard back then. Probably because you had no control over the power, no control over the perks that your units got, and the disparity between the marksmanship perk and the marching perk was quite a bit more in terms of like feelable. So this battle felt very even. The balance here really felt on point the entire way through. We start our initial push here with Trimble's division, kind of pushing with the objective of getting in a position that's over the fort. I'm not actually sure that this is the correct play. I haven't, really optimized my approach to this fight. Just kind of went with what I kind of went with. Which directions do I hate having the Confederates attack from when I play this battle as the Union commander? So when I'm playing as the Union, I really dislike it when they come from the north, where I'm posting up right now, predominantly because it gives them a lot of good cover and they're coming downhill and my perception, and it could be that it's early in the Union campaign, so we're still using, Springfield 42s, and our stats aren't all that great. It's a lot of these things combined together. But all of that being said, I feel as if when they attack from the north like this, they do so with a pretty high level of success. And so the first little bit here is just getting my dudes kind of into position. And the overall plan on this battle is for me to figure out where the enemy is, get control of these skirmishers who are proving to be kind of an annoying thorn in my side, and then take the first base. And once I have the first base, we'll develop things from there. At this point, I've forgotten that you get reinforcements. Although in the back of my mind, I'm sitting here and I'm saying like, I could have sworn you got artillery on this battle. I could have sworn that they give you cannon. Well, they do. They just don't at the start. Trimble's division is apparently poorly equipped. Although I say that, all of his troops have Lorenzes, which are super expensive. Now, I mean, that's a thing. Like, the AI doesn't pay for them, right? Like, so they're super expensive for me. But from the perspective of what you give to the AI troops, it's a line in Excel. My current frustration vis-a-vis the Northern Fortress, or depot, whatever, is that I'm not able to see it. And most of this cav does not actually have this. Well, the two little ones have the speed perk. You'll notice they're always a little bit faster than 2nd Virginia cav. The 2nd VA cav, my bigger unit, is, I believe it's it's the reduction in morale and melee, or melee and range morale damage received. So it's not even like a useful one like accuracy. And I think they've got Smith carbines, so not even like a good carbine. So I'm using the cavalry here as kind of a brute squad, and they really they make good on, in my estimation, the potential of cavalry. They take their losses. This right now, with that skirmisher unit that they're currently fighting, that is a very suboptimal place for them to be fighting. They are non-melee dedicated cavalry engaged with skirmishers in the woods. This is like the nightmare scenario. And the only reason I'm pulling it off is because there's 3 of me and 1 of them. And so before too long here, I wipe the unit, which is great. I swarm the first fort here. And it's not... So Early is the division commander that you get that comes with you. When I was playing... Long before I started recording episodes for this game, I had kind of come up with my own take on how to assault a fortification like this. And it was essentially a Napoleonic flying column, in essence, where I would form a single column of brigades covered, forming a large sort of T shape. And the front of the T, the thin but wide front of the T, was detached skirmishers who would receive less fire on the way in and would block line of fire to my more heavily formed troops, and they would inevitably get shot to pieces on the way in, but the main body of my infantry would be protected. And the initial wave of skirmishers gets shot loose, and then 1 or 2 or ideally 3 brigades of infantry crash one right after the other into the same target. And then I exploit that breach and push deeper. So what I did on the first fort, it's kind of the same idea, but instead of being like a thin, narrow column, it's a double column, or a division double line. 3 regiments here side by side with a screen of skirms, and the idea is I'm just moving as fast as possible. The rationale behind all of that is the northern fort has a great deal of nice armor, or not armor, cover, And so shooting them out of that fort seems not great. So, they seemed also pretty exposed. One brigade and that's it. And then some skirmishers. So I just said, okay, well, let's just swarm them, essentially. Problem is that I did not remember or know that there was going to be this force over here. 30th Ohio, 23rd Ohio, 36th Ohio. That looks right. Guys in the top right? Like they're coming at me pretty hard, and I'm not having a good time. This is a great attack, a great spoiling attack by the AI, and I take a lot of losses trying to get my dudes out of the fort that they just ran into taking in order to answer the threat of this attack from Ohio, or the Ohio, evidently, brigade under Scammon. So we eventually get a division-ish of troops online up there, and continue to use basically the fort here in the north as a fulcrum around which the rest of the Confederate battle line revolves. The force to the north, sort of the majority of the troops here in the west of the map are the Anvil, and then the 3 brigades in the north plus the cavalry plus 1 unit of skirmishers. So the division of troops in the north plus the cavalry squadrons plus the skirmishers, they all act as the Anvil, and they do so predominantly because they're mobile, and they can take advantage of that mobility. So I don't know yet. You don't see it on the screen. There's cannon. I know that it's got to be here because I'm being bombarded by it, but I can't quite see it yet. Just like I can't quite see skirmishers that seem to be shooting at one of my guys in the fort. So that's fun too. Right around now is when I start to see the cavalry, and I kind of modify my plan now that I know it's there. I mean, you can watch what's happening on the screen, and I'll talk to some kind of why I think I'm doing what I'm thinking when I do certain things. But for the most part, this is all just getting my shit in line. I wasn't expecting to have as much fun with this battle as I did, and I think it's because both armies are fairly well equipped, but also fairly inexperienced. And because the units are so small, because they're based on regiments, and I think they're based on regiments. One of the users on the Discord channel, a guy named Adishi, has actually commented on a few of my last video as well. I'm looking that up right now. He's working on, at least conceptually, a submod of this that sort of bases the game on regiments, and CM lacks. So he's working on a submod of the game where it'd be the same mechanics you see here in the rebalance. I mean, or theoretically, there's no reason you couldn't do a vanilla version of it, but the game would be built around the regiment, i.e. units. The units here are about the right size. Actually, the cannon all looks like it's way oversized for that kind of thing. Like you wouldn't be able to have a battery larger than. It would depend on whether you're talking merge batteries or not. So 6 or 12, somewhere in there. Infantry no larger than 1,000. Cavalry no larger than. What did it end up being? Was there a book strength on cavalry at the time? Was there even an official designation for light infantry? I don't even know. You'd need to pick numbers that seem to make sense. So given that infantry couldn't be larger than 1,000 and batteries couldn't be larger than 6, in my mind, a logical number for cavalry is like 300, 250, somewhere in there. Maybe 500, but even that seems high. I don't know. You get the idea. The big risk is, and the Discord channel, we talk about some of this stuff. The big risk is you would rapidly hit this point where, like, in the later part of the war, the number of units you're trying to keep on top of just gets dumb. Like, especially try to imagine the Battle of Richmond or the Battle of Washington at regimental scale. You would have something in excess of like 300 units on one side of the battle. It would just get stupid, right? Like you can if you really push it, you can actually get 100 brigades of or 100 units of one kind or another on the field under the command of the Union general. Now, I don't know if they're going to be any good. I don't know if they're going to have any good weapons. But theoretically, you can do it, right? Because in the vanilla game, the largest you can fit for a corps is 20 units, and you can have 5 of them, so you can get 100 plus supply wagons and generals. So technically speaking, if you want to get pedantic, 110. You triple that, right? Like double or triple that. So on the one hand, I really enjoy this battle. I really enjoy the play experience on this battle because the units are so small. It feels like a different game. Now, I have to be honest. This probably works out really strongly in the favor of the player, though. Capping the scaling on enemy units. Like if you can achieve even close to numeric parity with the AI, the game does probably tip really strongly in the favor of the player. And the only other counterbalancing, levers that Johnny or Panda have at that point are experience or equipment. And I mean, the idea of you'd go like every battle you'd wipe the map, and then the next time you met the Confederates on the battlefield again, they would have nothing but 3-star regiments. Like it pretty quickly would stretch the credulity even more, in fairness, than the game already does. Like, what did I end up inflicting as far as casualties at Shiloh? It was like 40,000, maybe. That sounds right. I don't even think there were that many at Shiloh. Like, like it was, like the numbers get kind of dumb, and then you go to the next battle, and the Confederates or the Union in this case, the Union's like, okay, we got one more, we'll keep going. So yeah, wildly off topic. Broadly though, like all you've been seeing on the screen is like setup for phase 2 of the battle. So phase 1, really this is I guess phase 3. Phase 1, capture the northern fort. Phase 2, get your main battle line online. And then some of this side skirmish stuff that I've got going on. This is I'm really happy with how this goes. Except for the losses the Cav take. So we managed to get 3 Cav units around behind the Union. We swarm down one small battery in the north, and then we get these Cav units in place, and I managed to eyeball this pretty monstrous Union battery down here, so I swarm it too with 3 units of Cav, and we end up getting them to surrender, which is pretty great. Now that said, we get them to surrender in a really weird, precarious place that I'm not mega confident that I can keep that gun from rallying, but dudes, it's 20 pounders. So like I actually don't know if 20 pounders would be all that terribly effective in this battle. They're not great counter infantry guns, and it's not like I'm leaning really heavily on my counter battery in this particular fight. Anyway, the point is like why that's useful is we've wrapped around the Union rear, and we're disrupting them. Units that should be facing my front line are turning to face the Cav threat in the rear. They're exposing themselves to flank fire. They are, for the most part, facing west, northwest, and north, and they're fine to do that. But anything that I can do that will confuse them or get them to turn east or God willing south exposes them to flank fire. The second fort, I do more or less the same thing. I just swarm it with units. We engage one of them with twice their number. The other one's like weirdly kind of like moving into place. So it's not quite there yet. 70th New York. So we just swarm 71st New York, and then the 70th takes a minute to get into position. And so now what I'm doing is I'm trying to support the force that's taking the fort, because they still, they're still contesting it. In fairness, not for much longer. We routed the 71st, and the 70th is frankly not far behind them at that point. And now I'm trying to figure out which of my units has the accuracy perk, which luckily I get lucky, and it's the first one, because units in forts on this map or any of the other ones seem to be, to my perception, more effective. I noticed that at Malvern and Gaines is that I wasn't, and to a lesser degree Shiloh. It's a shame the Confederates attacking Shiloh have completely forgotten the notion of getting in the cover. So when you hold it, you can't use the trenches, but the Union can move into the trenches. It's a fun time. In fairness, the turnaround to that is, I think if the Confederates could occupy those trenches, especially in their current state, Shiloh would theoretically get too easy. Although at the same time, you're still constantly getting raked by that the gunship, or the pair of gunships in the river. And it's interesting. Evidently, Union players are saying the gunships don't hit hard enough, and Confederate players are saying the gunships hit too hard. That tells me that from a balancing perspective, as much as I want to bitch about it, it's probably where it needs to be. If neither side's happy about it, you're probably on the right track. Anyway, so yeah, we've got the flags here. I mean, the battle's winding down. Now it's cleanup. So now we're in the fourth phase of the battle, cleanup. We've got both forts. The Union command has no artillery, has been significantly reduced in number, and honestly lacks the apparati necessary to go on the offensive. So all of those things combined, I'm trying to get the supply wagon. There's a huge misplay on my part here. So I get distracted because I like the AI, place a very high value on wiping out units like skirmishers and cavalry. I realize how useful those units are for the purposes of disruption. The reason I think this is a misplay on my part is that the 12th Ohio, the 569 guys down here on the south of the map, they were not routing, but they were white shielded when I first saw them. And the positioning of my cav units and that unit when I first saw it, it's about where it is right now, is I could have charged them white shielded and they would have routed nearly instantly, and you would have had 3 cav units, right up on your grill immediately on a routing infantry unit. It would have been a great time for the cav, and I would have been able to milk a lot of kills. Instead, I got tunnel vision on the cavalry. Now, in fairness, I did wipe the cavalry, but I think that was not the right play. Getting the cavalry versus knocking out the infantry unit. Because at the end of the day, 200 cavalry isn't going to really do anything in this battle anymore. So we're closing up on things as far as the fighting is concerned. Like I said, this is a pretty short video this week. And the one coming up is Second Bull Run, which is a very cool battle, both in terms of like historically, I think it's a very cool battle, and then also from the play perspective as a game, especially from the Union perspective. I think it's a really fun battle on the Union side. It's a little, I don't want to say it's less fun as a Confederate versus the Union, but it's tough in a different way. So with the second Bull Run, you guys should loosely be aware of kind of how it works. Like, first phase of the battle is you hold against a heavy Union attack, and then the second phase is you get reinforcements from the part of the army, part of the bottom right corner of the map, and that's supposed to be, is it Longstreet? I think it's Lee and Longstreet, right? That sounds right. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's Longstreet, but I'm not 100% sure. You get the reinforcements, and they basically hammer and anvil right up. And historically, there was a great deal of disruption and confusion on the Union side, and it was a tactical, operational, and strategic, just masterpiece for the Confederates. And it is, I think, the first time you get to fight as a commander a true open field battle. So I say that Malvern and Gaines are both obvious, like objectively, like they're open and they're big, right? And Shiloh is too. The reason that I call out Second Bull Run specifically, or Second Manassas specifically, as one of the first chances you have to do that in a way that I think really kind of underscores what this game, finger quotes here, is supposed to be about, is because, especially at Malvern Hill, you have a very limited front on which you can maneuver. At Gaines Mill, that meets the criteria as well. But at Gaines Mill, the Union Army is fairly static until you break its defenses. So it's not so much an issue of grand maneuver as it is like siege. It's a siege battle at that point. Shiloh is another good example of a good field battle, especially one where you're attacking on a relatively narrow frontage compared to Second Bull Run or Antietam or Fredericksburg. It's a small battle, but I think it's still a pretty large battlefield. But for whatever reason, I still just feel like none of those battles give you the opportunity to truly maneuver in the same way that you can with Second Manassas. I think Stones River is also an excellent, super fun, big army maneuver battle. Fredericksburg gets there too, but for weird reasons that are probably technical, the battle's split into these weird phases. So by the time typically that you have the opportunity to truly maneuver with your whole army, the AI is usually battered into submission and there's not really an army left. Gettysburg is pretty cool too. Same kind of deal though. It's broken into phases, and usually by the time you get to like Pickett's Charge, if you're playing as the Union, the Confederates have been battered into submission. And if you're playing as the CSA, if you get to the third day, you will have done so deliberately, and then you'll Pickett's Charge into an anemic, broken defender force. What's the battle? Chancellorsville. Yeah, Chancellorsville's a good maneuver one too. So the grand battles kind of all have that opportunity, but up until now, I think you've been struggling with two different factors. One, fairly like limited maneuver scope or opportunity for you to approach the battle in a unique manner, and then two, I would argue the army is just now finally becoming an army, by which I mean, prior to this, you're usually bringing a lot of untested rookies to the battlefield and a small nucleus of experienced veterans. And that's because for each major battle, you will have had to grow your army at a very fast rate, straining, I think, the budget, straining the ability for you to pay for them, but also for you to equip them. And so you usually have been scraping the bottom of the barrel, grabbing whatever you can find to put on units to just fill the battlefield up, right? So by the time you get the Second Bull Run, you should, or Manassas, you should finally, the casualties here don't matter. None of these troops go into my pool. The captures, I think, do, officers or whatever. The officers don't matter. The recovered and captured weapons do. So it's a lot of Lorenzas, makes me very happy. 20-pound parrots are great. The Hunter, the Enfield 1856 is basically the Hunter musket. So that's a good capture as well. So point I'm trying to make by second Manassas, you should have 2 corps that are pretty well developed, that have a good level of experience, that have mostly rifled weapons. That's kind of the thing that makes it feel like it's special to me, is this is the time when you're not just chucking raw meat into the battlefield, you're chucking an army onto the battlefield. I'm still going to have to add a division to Second Corps to fill it out, and some troops are going to have to get jiggered around and everything like that. I think I do appreciate the potential of mass cavalry, though. So one of the things I'm going to be resurrecting, if you guys watch my old series, is I had the concept of the light division, where I had a brute squad of 3 units of cavalry running around. I think cavalry is a weird thing where like one unit alone is kind of meh. And then a lot of units together, like it's synergistic in a kind of cool way. So I'll do a camp video before we go into second Manassas. I have a finance final coming up next week. So the camp video you can expect before next week, and then second Bull Run will have to wait. And then that being the case, I will see you guys in the next one. But until then, have a great weekend. Happy Veterans Day if I don't get a video up before then. And I'll see you then. This is Fiasco signing out.